Imagine a summer when rainbow bubbles filled the air and every backyard pulsed with laughter, but every breath held a chemical secret. The 1970s gave rise to toys so wild they'd be banned in seconds today. Explosive plastic chemistry sets, ovens that scorched tiny fingers, playthings laced with poisons hiding beneath their cartoon paint. At the time, no one questioned the danger until the recalls, the bans, and tragedies began stacking up. These are the 10 toys from the 70s that would be illegal today, and some left a body count. The real question is, how did these beloved childhood icons turn into weapons hiding in plain sight? Number 10. Bubble Magic, straight from a tube that smelled like a cross between a nail salon and a science experiment gone wrong. Super elastic bubble plastic promised kids the power to blow bright, rubbery bubbles that floated longer and bounced higher than anything from a soapy wand. The process felt like a secret lab trick. Squeeze out a blob of thick rainbow goop, attach it to a yellow straw, and blow until the plastic balloon stretched and shimmered in the sunlight. The air filled with a sharp, sweet chemical tang, acetone and ethyl acetate, the same solvents found in glue and paint thinners, swirling right under your nose. But the real magic was what you couldn't see. Every breath through that straw sent a rush of fumes straight to your lungs. Polyvinyl acetate, the main ingredient, turned to a sticky film as the acetone evaporated, leaving behind a bubble tough enough to pinch and stack, if you didn't pass out first. Parents might have noticed the flammable warning on the box, but few realized the stuff could catch fire with a spark or a sunny windowsill. The instructions said, not for kids under 5, but what kid could resist a tube that turned them into a mad scientist, conjuring up plastic spheres that outlasted any soap bubble? For a generation, that plasticky, headache-inducing smell became the scent of summer afternoons. Fingers sticky, cheeks flushed, kids crowded around picnic tables, daring each other to blow bigger, brighter, longer. Behind every rainbow bubble floated a chemical cocktail that would never make it past a safety inspector today. In the 70s, danger was just part of the fun, one deep breath at a time. Number 9. The Easy Bake Oven was a rite of passage, a gateway to grown-up kitchens, wrapped in pastel plastic and the promise of independence. Every birthday party seemed to feature its own little bakery, with kids lining up to mix packets of cake powder and water, then sliding the pan into a slot that glowed with the steady heat of a 100-watt bulb. The thrill was real. A few minutes later, out came a tiny cupcake, warm enough to steam up the plastic window and send sugary smells drifting through the living room. Parents snapped Polaroids, kids beamed with pride, and nobody questioned the wisdom of letting 7-year-olds operate a miniature oven hot enough to sear skin in seconds. The original design counted on light bulbs for heat, but those bulbs could push the inside temperature to over 350 degrees Fahrenheit, enough to bake a cake and enough to leave a scar. Curious fingers found their way past the plastic door, brushing against the metal tray or the bulb itself. It didn't take much, a slip, a grab, a dare from a friend. The burns were quick and sharp, and sometimes kids got their hands stuck trying to rescue a stubborn cookie or a piece of melted plastic. For years, the only advice was supervision and a warning on the box. But the dangers didn't end with the old-school models. In 2007, Hasbro recalled nearly 1 million Easy Bake ovens after 29 children got their fingers trapped in the front-loading door. At least 5 suffered burns, and one 5-year-old girl lost part of her finger. The recall made headlines, and suddenly, the Easy Bake's reputation for harmless fun was scorched by the reality of emergency room visits and panicked parents. The company offered a retrofit kit, but the damage was done. What started as a badge of independence turned into a lesson in the limits of childhood freedom. Proof that even the sweetest memories sometimes come with a sting. Number 8. The Thing Maker, also known as creepy crawlers, was less a toy and more a miniature forge, one that handed kids the keys to their own molten laboratory. It came with metal molds shaped like bugs, lizards, or monsters, plus bottles of thick-colored plastic goop. The instructions were simple. Squeeze the goop into the mold, slide it into the open-faced heater, and wait as the mixture bubbled and sizzled at temperatures between 390 and 440 degrees Fahrenheit. The scent was unforgettable, a sharp, plasticky tang that filled the kitchen or basement, mixing with the smell of singed fingertips and burnt carpet fibers. Kids watched through the plastic shield as their creations cooked, faces glowing in the orange light. The metal plates were hot enough to leave a mark in less than a second, but the risk was part of the appeal. Every blister or scab became a story to swap at recess, proof you could handle the Thing Maker's bite. Parents shrugged it off. After all, the box said ages 8 and up, and the burns were usually minor. Mattel's own marketing rep once joked, "My little girl has burned herself several times, never seriously." By the late 70s, new safety rules forced Mattel to pull the plug. Regulations capped temperatures and banned heating elements in toys for younger kids. The Thing Maker's open furnace was suddenly off limits. But for a generation, the thrill of pouring goop, the hiss of the hot plate, and the pride of surviving a little pain turned this toy into a rite of passage. In the 70s, danger wasn't hidden. It was right there on the kitchen table, humming and ready, daring you to make something wild. Number 7. Battlestar Galactica was everywhere in late 1978. Spaceships on lunchboxes, Cylon helmets on the playground, and missile-firing toys at the top of every wish list. The Viper and Cylon Raider models, fresh from Mattel's assembly lines, looked like they'd flown straight off the TV screen. Each came with a pocket-sized arsenal, bright red plastic missiles you could load and launch with a satisfying snap. For kids, it felt like holding a piece of the future, an invitation to recreate space battles in the living room, one click at a time. But the fantasy broke on Christmas week. In a Chicago suburb, a 4-year-old boy, Robert Jeffrey Warren, unwrapped a Cylon Raider and did what kids do. He explored. The missile, just the right size for curious fingers and mouths, lodged in his throat after an accidental launch. Paramedics arrived fast, but the damage was done. 6 days later, on New Year's Eve, Robert died, never waking from the coma that followed those desperate minutes without air. The news hit hard. Parents who'd trusted the Mattel name and the shiny packaging suddenly found themselves staring at the small, spring-loaded missiles scattered across their carpets. The recall swept through January. Mattel urged families to send in the missiles for a Hot Wheels car, and the company redesigned the toys so the missiles could never be fired again. In the background, whispers grew louder. How could a toy meant to inspire hero worship leave a family in mourning? The Battlestar Galactica tragedy didn't just end a toy fad, it changed how parents looked at every pop culture tie-in on the shelf. Suddenly, nostalgia came with a warning label. The thrill of launching a plastic rocket gave way to a quieter truth. Sometimes, the price of fandom is heartbreak. Number 6. Backyard slip and slide. Just a long yellow strip of plastic, a garden hose, and the promise of summer glory. The first run always started with a running leap, arms out, feet pounding across the lawn, bare skin skimming over water and sunlight. Neighbors lined up for their turn, grass clippings sticking to legs, Kool-Aid stains on lips, the air thick with laughter, and the sharp scent of hot vinyl. For kids under 10, it felt like flying. But for anyone bigger, older siblings, uncles, even brave parents, the landing was never quite the same. The original slip and slide, released by Whammo in 1961, was designed for children under about 125 pounds. By the 1970s, it was a fixture in backyards everywhere. But the warnings on the box were easy to miss. Teenagers and adults saw a challenge, not a limit. They'd take a running start, hit the plastic at full speed, and, unlike the kids, come to a sudden, bone-jarring stop when their weight buried them in the grass. The jolt sent shockwaves up the spine, necks twisting at angles no one expected. Between 1973 and 1991, 7 adults and one 13-year-old suffered neck injuries or paralysis after using a slip and slide. The slide didn't break, but their bodies did. The thrill of gliding across wet plastic turned, in a heartbeat, into ambulance sirens and hospital stays. Michael Hubert, a 34-year-old from Wisconsin, broke his neck in 1987 and spent the rest of his life as an incomplete paraplegic. Lawsuits followed, and in court, juries heard how the toy's design made catastrophic injury almost inevitable for anyone over a certain size. Whammo argued the warnings were clear, but juries saw the reality. Age limits meant little when the whole family wanted in on the fun. The slip and slide stayed on shelves, but the lesson echoed through every backyard. Some toys are only safe if you never outgrow them. Number 5. Clackers turned every schoolyard into a percussion section, echoing with the unmistakable rhythm of plastic balls smashing together. Kids slipped the ring over a finger, snapped their wrists, and sent the spheres flying up, down, until the air buzzed with sharp, satisfying clacks. The trick was all in the timing. Too slow, and the balls just thunked together. Too fast, and they blurred into a staccato frenzy that drew a crowd. For a moment, it felt like mastering a secret instrument, one that lived somewhere between a yo-yo and a hand grenade. But the real spectacle came when things went wrong. The balls, made from brittle acrylic, weren't built for the kind of punishment that came with playground one-upmanship. Push the tempo, and sooner or later, one would shatter mid-swing, exploding with a sound like breaking glass. Shards shot across the blacktop, catching sunlight as they whistled past faces and bare arms. A good day ended with a chorus of clacks and a few bruised knuckles. A bad one meant a trip to the nurse with a sliver of plastic lodged near the eye. By 1973, the noise had reached Washington. Reports of injuries piled up, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission moved in. That spring, U.S. Marshals seized 50,000 boxes of Clackers from a Wisconsin warehouse, the kind of government raid usually reserved for moonshine or contraband. The toy was banned nationwide, but not before it left its mark on lockers, on lunchboxes, and on the hands of anyone brave enough to chase that perfect, dangerous rhythm. Clackers didn't just soundtrack the 70s, they crashed through it, one shattered beat at a time. Number 4. Rows of action figures lined up on shag carpet, their capes bright, their plastic faces frozen in heroic poses. But beneath those vivid colors lurked a hidden threat, one that didn't explode, burn, or shatter on impact, but seeped in slowly year after year. Most vintage figures from the 1970s and early 80s were painted or molded with pigments loaded with lead. Not a trace, not a little, some yellow and red plastics tested at nearly 7,000 parts per million, about 70 times the legal limit today. At the time, no one thought twice about it. The packaging didn't mention heavy metals, and the only warning was about small parts, not the poison baked into the plastic. Kids chewed on capes, sucked on helmets, and carried their favorites everywhere. On the bus, in the bath, even to bed. Scientists now know that lead exposure, even in tiny amounts, can lower IQ and cause lifelong health problems. The danger wasn't in a single afternoon's play, but in the slow buildup from hours and days spent with these toxic heroes. The rules have changed. Today, every toy must pass strict lead testing before it ever hits the shelf. But for a generation, the real risk came from the figures we trusted most. Bright, bold, and quietly hazardous. Number 3. The Austin Magic pistol looked like something straight out of a mad scientist's workshop. A toy ray gun that didn't just pop caps or shoot water, but fired ping-pong balls with a bang that could rattle the windows. The secret? Calcium carbide crystals, sold in little tins and labeled as magic rocks. Add a splash of water, close the breech, and the chemistry show began. Acetylene gas built up in the chamber, just waiting for a spark. Pull the trigger, and the pistol spat out a ping-pong ball with a crack of fire and a muzzle flash that could stretch 2 feet or more. On a good day, the ball sailed 70 feet across the yard. On a bad day, too much carbide meant the whole thing could rupture in your hands. Flames, noise, and the sharp tang of burnt chemicals filled the air, while kids bragged about the distance and the danger. The instructions warned against overloading, but who could resist pushing the limits? Some states eventually classified the toy as a firearm, and most magic pistols didn't survive their own experiments, either blown apart by backyard chemists or quietly retired by nervous parents. In the wild world of 70s toys, this one turned every backyard into a laboratory and every kid into a part-time explosives engineer. Number 2. Sky dancers looked like the future of play. Part fairy, part helicopter, all glitter and pastel wings. Kids would anchor the doll to its launcher, yank the ripcord, and watch as the figure spun up with a whir, then shot skyward, trailing sparkles and synthetic hair. The first moments always felt like magic, the doll rising, spinning, catching sunlight as it lifted off the living room carpet or soared above backyard grass. But the flight path was never predictable. Instead of graceful arcs, sky dancers often veered off course, ricocheting off ceilings and walls diving into faces, or crash landing onto unsuspecting siblings. The hard plastic wings, meant to shimmer and flutter, packed enough punch to chip teeth, scratch corneas, and leave bruises. By the end of the 1990s, more than 150 injuries had been reported. Split lips, black eyes, even a few emergency room visits for deep cuts. In the year 2000, the recall swept $8.9 million from shelves, a sign that even the most enchanting toys could turn rogue. The lesson should have stuck, but every generation seems to need its own reminder. Beauty and danger can spin from the same string, and sometimes the toys that launch the highest come crashing down the hardest. Summer afternoons meant bare feet on warm grass, the tang of barbecue smoke, and the sharp whistle of a lawn dart flying overhead. The game was simple. Toss the heavy metal dart, watch it arc through sunlight, and hope it landed inside a plastic ring instead of someone's foot. For kids like Michelle Snow, the backyard was a stage for laughter and competition, never a place to worry about hidden danger. But the illusion of safety vanished with a single errant throw. Hospital records from the late 1970s and early 80s tell the story that toy boxes never did. Over 6,100 emergency room visits, most of them children under 15, half under 10. The injuries weren't just scrapes or bruises. Skulls fractured, eyes lost, lives changed in a heartbeat. On paper, lawn darts were a family game. In reality, they turned summer fun into a roll of the dice, and for thousands of families, a trip to the ER was the only prize. David Snow's world changed forever on April 5, 1987. The loss of his daughter, Michelle, to a lawn dart injury set him on a mission that would outlast his grief. He gathered medical records, scoured hospital data, and tracked down families whose lives had been upended by the same game. His research showed more than 6,000 emergency room visits in less than a decade, most of them kids, many under 10. Snow refused to let the numbers fade into the background. He lobbied the Consumer Product Safety Commission relentlessly, testifying before officials and sharing stories that statistics alone couldn't tell. The pushback was fierce. Manufacturers argued that warnings and age limits were enough. But Snow kept going, and on December 19, 1988, the CPSC voted to ban lawn darts nationwide. One parent's fight changed the rules for every backyard, ending an era when danger came packaged as family fun. Between 1978 and 1986, over 6,100 emergency room visits were linked to lawn darts alone, leading to a national ban in December 1988. Throughout this countdown, every toy, from lead-painted action figures to the Battlestar Galactica missile, revealed how familiar childhood treasures once hid serious risks. The recall of 985,000 easy-bake ovens, the seizure of 50,000 boxes of Clackers, and the documented injuries from slip-and-slides and sky dancers show a pattern. Safety standards often followed tragedy, not prevented it. Despite decades of regulation, some questions remain, such as how many injuries went unreported, or what long-term effects early chemical exposures had on children. Today, federal safety laws ban many of these hazards, yet evolving technology means new risks still emerge. The record is clear. The toys may have changed, but the lesson endures. each generation's fun comes with responsibility, a reminder written not just in faded packaging, but in the facts and stories that shaped safer play for all.